Let me ask you a question. What does a person have to lose to have truly lost everything? Money? No. Money can be earned again. A house? No. A house can be rebuilt. Honor? Perhaps. But if a man loses his wife at a gambling table, that man had already lost everything long before that moment. That night only made it visible. 1891 London, February, past midnight. Craven's Club. The most exclusive, the darkest, the quietest club in London. From the outside, it looked ordinary, a stone facade, a single plaque, even the name written small. Money alone was not enough to enter. A name was required. The right name. Inside, smoke, whiskey, and money. A great deal of money. The largest games of the night were played at these tables. Lords, barons, sometimes men of even higher standing. Everyone left their masks at home. Here, there were only cards, and cards did not lie. People did. Cards did not. That night, at a corner table, 4 men had been seated. It was 2 a.m. 3 had already withdrawn, 1 with a small loss, 1 with a devastating one, and 1 in disgrace. 2 men remained. On the left, Lord Julian Ashby, 30 years old, handsome, well-dressed. But that elegance was deceptive now. His collar loosened, his cravat undone, the faint bruised shadows forming beneath his eyes. On the right, the Duke of Blackwood. Now I must describe Blackwood to you, because this man at that table, in that light, on that night, was anything but ordinary. He was 38, dark hair, sharp features, an upright posture, but none of that was what drew attention. It was the silence. Blackwood did not speak, not unless it was necessary. He watched his cards calmly, patiently, with the stillness of a man for whom time seemed to move differently. And the more his opponent grew anxious, the more he sweated, the more he reached for his drink, the calmer Blackwood became. It drove men mad. It was driving Julian mad. There was no money left on the table. Well, there was, but only in front of Blackwood. A tall, orderly, cold stack. In front of Julian, nothing. Elena, no. Julian was not thinking that name. He could not. If he did, his hands would tremble. And if his hands trembled, he would not be able to hold the cards, the last hand, his final chance. The croupier shuffled a fresh deck. Julian reached for his drink. Empty. He did not know how long it had been empty. It did not matter. The last hand, Julian said. His voice cracked. He noticed. He did not care. Even stakes. Blackwood looked at him. That gaze, calm, deep, as if reading everything passing through Julian's mind. With what? Blackwood asked. The first words he had spoken that night. Julian checked his pockets. A pointless motion. He knew they were empty. What remained? A note of debt. There were none left to give. Land? The last deed had been placed on the table 2 hours earlier. What remained? And then, for the first time that night, the thought came to him. He tried to push it away. He failed. The Ashby estate, Julian said. Blackwood waited. It's gone, Julian added. You know that. I do. Then Julian stopped. He looked at the table, at the cards, and then, in that dark, whiskey-soaked, smoke-filled room, he said something. Something that everyone at that table heard. The waiters heard it. The old man in the corner heard it. And years later, they would all remember it. Because some things, once heard, carve themselves into the mind. They do not leave. Lady Ashby, Julian said. My wife. The room froze, truly froze. The smoke, the whispers, the distant laughter, all of it paused for a moment. Then the murmurs began. Your wife? Blackwood asked. His voice had not changed. No shock, no disgust, only a question. The last hand, Julian said. If I win, everything returns. If I lose, he stopped. Lady Ashby passes to Blackwood. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Blackwood looked at his cards, then at Julian, and in that look, there was something. Julian could not read it then. Later, he would understand. But not in that moment. Because Julian was drunk. Because he was panicking. Because a man who has been losing for hours does not see clearly. What was in Blackwood's eyes was not anticipation, nor anger. It was something like a plan. Very well, Blackwood said. One word. The croupier dealt the cards. Julian looked at his hand. It was good. Truly good. The best hand he had seen all night. His heart began to race. This was it. This hand would restore everything. Money, land, honor. And Clara would never know about this night. Blackwood placed his cards on the table, slowly, calmly, as always. And Julian looked at them, and something inside him went out. It was the better hand, far better. Silence. Blackwood stood, buttoning his coat, calm, deliberate, like a man whose business was finished. I have won, he said. No triumph, no mockery, only fact. Julian opened his mouth, closed it again. Tomorrow night, Blackwood said. He had not interrupted Julian. He had simply spoken. The Hartley Ball, near Buckingham. Lady Ashby will be there. Julian froze. What? I expect you as well. Blackwood took his hat. A front seat will be reserved for you. What do you mean? Blackwood paused, turned, and that look, cold, deep, seeing everything, rested on Julian. 1 second, 2. You will watch, Blackwood said. Nothing more. He turned, walked away, left the room. Julian remained at the table. There were whispers around him, eyes on him. But he heard none of it, because only one word echoed in his mind. You will watch. What was he going to watch? That night, when he returned home to the large, silent, dark house, he climbed the stairs, stopped at the door of the bedroom. There was no sound inside. Clara was asleep. She always was. Every night Julian returned late. Every night Clara slept. Every morning Julian left before she woke, unable to look at her face. But tonight, his hand rested on the door. He did not push it open. He simply held it there. And inside him, did he feel something? Regret? No. Julian had mastered the art of postponing regret. He had practiced it for years. Only one thing remained. You will watch. He withdrew his hand, went to his own room, and that night, for the first time in years, Julian did not sleep. Because some things do not let a man sleep. Not what he has done, but what he is about to do. Now I must tell you about Clara. Because until now, you have heard only a name, Lady Ashby, Julian's wife. The woman lost at a gambling table. But Clara was far more than that. And without understanding her, you cannot understand what that table meant, what weight that document carried. why that dance would change everything. Clara Whitmore, at 16, knew this. The world was beautiful. This was not naivete, not foolishness. She simply had the ability to see beauty. The morning light in the garden, her mother's voice, the old dust-scented pages of books, small things, and she knew one more thing: James Blackwood. James was 19 that year. The children of neighboring estates, they had always known each other, but knowing was not the same as seeing. Clara truly saw him at 16. A summer day, in the garden, James had jumped from a tree, not fallen, jumped. She did not even remember why anymore. But that jump, absurd, childish, unnecessary, made her laugh. She laughed in a way that made him look at her as he stood up. And that look was different. 2 years passed. Gardens, books, long walks, conversations, real ones. Not the weather is pleasant conversations, ideas, questions, arguments. James listened to her, truly listened. And Clara held on to that because her father did not listen. Because in that world, women were rarely listened to. But James heard her. At 18, Clara understood. She loved James Blackwood. She did not say it. In that era, such things were not spoken. Families spoke first. Protocols were followed. Everything formalized. But James knew. Clara knew. They both knew. And both were waiting for the right moment. The right moment never came because Julian Ashby did. Lord Julian Ashby, handsome, charismatic, the kind of man who turned heads when he entered a room, and wealthy, that year at least. His family was rising, their connection strong. Clara's father saw it, calculated, and one evening he called her in. Julian Ashby wants you. Clara froze. Father, he is from a good family, strong connections. He will provide well for you. James Blackwood holds no title yet. Her father returned to his desk. The conversation was over. The Ashby family is waiting. That night, Clara went to James. In the garden, dark, cold. He was already waiting. He had sensed something was wrong. Clara told him. James was silent for a long time. Then he said only this: "The choice is yours." Clara had expected more, a fight, a refusal. "No, do not go." "I will speak to your father." He said none of it, because James understood the rules. He knew what it meant to oppose a father's decision. He did not want to put Clara in that position. But Clara, she read that silence differently. She read it as abandonment. The wedding took place 6 months later. Clara wore white. She was beautiful. Everyone said so. Julian smiled at her. Flowers were thrown. And Clara smiled. Because she had to. The first year was not bad. Julian was not attentive, but he was not cruel. He was occupied. Meetings, clubs, dinners. Clara managed the house. She was not thanked. Such things were not expected. The second year, the debts began. Small, quiet debts. Of course, Clara was not told. Ladies need not concern themselves. But she noticed. Bills delayed. Fewer servants. Julian returning later each night. Gambling. She understood. She did not ask. Because if she did, Julian would become angry. And when Julian was angry, he would not speak for days. And that silence was what exhausted Clara the most. In the third year, something had happened. A small thing. But Clara would remember it forever. She had been sitting in the library, reading, as always. Julian had entered, not drunk, but he had been drinking. "What are you reading?" he had asked. Clara had shown him the book, Philosophy, Locke. Julian had laughed, not mockingly, just he had not understood. "Why?" he had asked. "It interests me." Julian had looked at her for a second. Then he had left. It was a small thing, but in that look, Clara had seen it. Julian did not see her. He never had. He had a house. He had a wife. Both were in their proper place. But Clara did not exist for him. In the 4th year, the estate was gone. Quietly, in a single night. Julian had not told her. Clara had learned from the servants the next morning. They were moving. A smaller house, a less polished street in London. Clara had sat in her room that day. She had not cried. What was there to cry for? The estate? It had never been hers. It had been in Julian's name. Everything had been in Julian's name. Nothing had been in Clara's name. In the 5th year, Clara had done something. Something small, quiet, unnoticed. She had gone to a lawyer, alone, without telling Julian. "Divorce," she had said. "Is it possible?" The lawyer had looked at her, that look lawyers gave in that era, the look that asked, "What does this woman think she is doing?" "Difficult," he had said. "You need grounds, evidence, time." "I understand," Clara had said. She had left, and she had begun to gather documents, quietly, slowly. One piece each day, one step each week. No one knew. Julian did not know. In that February night, Clara had been at home, in the sitting room, with her book, in front of the fireplace. Julian had gone to the club. He always went to the club. Clara had not asked where. She had stopped asking long ago. It was 11, then midnight, then 1, then 2. Clara had closed her book, extinguished the candle, gone to bed. She did not know what had happened that night. She did not know her name had been spoken at a gambling table. She did not know she had been lost. She slept. And in that sleep, that quiet, tired sleep, carrying the weight of 5 years of marriage, she dreamed. Of what? She did not remember in the morning, but when she woke, there were tears on her face. Julian returned home that morning. He passed through the room, did not look at Clara, as always. But this time, Clara noticed something. There was something on Julian's face, something different. She could not name it. It felt like fear, but she had never seen Julian afraid. "Are you well?" Clara had asked. Julian had stopped, turned. That look, "I'm fine," he had said. His voice had cracked, and he had left. Clara held her coffee. She looked out the window. A London February morning, gray, cold, crowded. There was something inside her, something like intuition, the sharpness that comes from years of reading a house, reading a man, understanding everything in silence. Something had changed. She did not know what, but it had. That afternoon, an invitation arrived. The Hartley Ball. The following night, Clara opened the envelope, read it. Her name was there. Clara Ashby. She had been invited. On the back, a small note, handwritten, in a hand she did not recognize. Just 2 words. Come, J.B. J.B. Clara froze. She stared at those 2 letters for a long time. James Blackwood. She held her hands. They did not tremble. But inside, something moved. A door that had been closed for 10 years shifted open. Let me ask you this. Can a person remain silent for 10 years, truly silent? Carrying something inside, feeling its weight every day, hearing that person's name in every season, and still remain silent? Most people cannot. James Blackwood could. But that February night, the silence ended. I need to tell you about James, truly tell you, because until now, you have only seen him at the gambling table, calm, placing his cards, saying, "I've won." But that man had not arrived there by accident. Nothing had been an accident. James Blackwood had lost Clara at 19. Was lost the right word? He did not know. Clara had chosen, or had been forced to choose. He had spent years thinking about the difference. He remembered that night in the garden. Clara had come, told him, "My father wants me to marry Julian Ashby." What had he said? "The choice is yours." It had been the wrong thing to say. He understood that later, much later, that Clara had been waiting for something else, for him to fight, to say no, to say, "I will speak to your father." But James had chosen protocol, silence. He had let her go, the greatest mistake of his life. He had not attended the wedding. He could not. To watch was impossible. But in the years that followed, news traveled. London was small socially. Everyone knew everyone. The Ashby family was drowning in debt. The estate was gone. Julian moved from club to club. And Clara was silent. She appeared at balls, at gatherings, whenever required. But she was silent. Not the same Clara. Not the one who laughed in gardens, who read Locke, who asked questions. She had gone quiet. James could see it, from a distance, carefully. And each time he saw it, something tightened inside him. The turning point had come 2 years earlier. At a dinner, he had passed by Clara in a crowded hall by chance. Clara had been speaking with others, smiling, politely, correctly. But those eyes, James had known those eyes for 10 years. He could tell the difference between a real smile and a false one. This was false. And in those eyes, there was exhaustion. Deep, bone-settling exhaustion built over years. That night, when James returned home, he had thought only one thing: enough. He began to investigate, quietly, slowly, without haste. Because James Blackwood was not a man who rushed. His father had taught him haste burns. James measured everything, weighed everything, waited for the right moment. What he found was severe. Julian Ashby's debts were enormous. Not only gambling, failed investments, false partnerships, multiple creditors. Julian was covering one hole with another. The system would collapse. The only question was, when? And when it did, where would Clara be? James went to a lawyer. "Clara Ashby," he said, "if she wished to divorce, would it be possible?" The lawyer calculated. Difficult. Grounds required. Evidence. And if Julian Ashby objects, "He will not object," James said. "How can you?" "He will not object." The lawyer understood. He did not ask further. The next step was the clubs. James had not been a member of Craven's Club. He had not wanted to be, but he joined, specifically, because Julian was there every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And James waited. He studied Julian, not truly knowing him, observing him. How did Julian behave at the table? When did he panic? When did he play blindly? The answer? Always. Julian was a terrible gambler. Not only terrible, dangerously so. Because when he lost, he did not stop. He could not stop. Every loss pushed him into greater risk. This time, I will win. And every this time buried him deeper. James saw this, and his plan formed. It was simple, and simple plans are the most dangerous. Draw Julian to a table, a large table. Strip him of everything that night, money, land, everything. And then, in the final hand, wait for Julian to make the offer himself. Wait. Because James would never propose it. To win a woman at cards? No. But Julian would. James knew that. Because Julian was that kind of man. The kind who, at the final moment, would place the last thing he had on the table. And that last thing was Clara. James knew it. He despised it, truly despised it. But there was no other way. No legal way, no social way. Julian would object. Families would interfere. Years would pass. This way was brutal, but it was fast and certain. That night, everything had gone as planned. Julian had fallen, money, land, everything. And in the final hand, at the exact moment James had expected, Lady Ashby, my wife. When James heard that sentence, something tightened inside him. Was it anger? Yes, toward Julian. But also something else, something like pain, because Clara's name on that table, in those men's mouths, in that way, no, he continued. Said very well, and he won. But now the real matter began. Because Clara did not know. She knew nothing. And James could not go to her and say, I have won you. That was unacceptable. So, the ball. The ball would resolve everything. Julian would be there. If he could not pay his debts, prison awaited him. He would come. He would sit. He would watch. Clara would come with that invitation, those 2 letters, after 10 years of silence. And the dance would say everything. Everything James could not say. Everything he had carried for 10 years. Not words, not explanation, not even apology. Only a hand extended and a look that said, I am still here. That morning, James sat at his desk. He looked at the invitation, Clara's name, the note he had written. Come, J.B. Was it enough? He did not know, but he knew one thing. That night, everything would change, or everything would end, completely, irreversibly. And that thought, that heavy, real, 10-year thought, had lifted him from his chair. He walked to the window. London lay outside, gray, cold, unchanged. But today, it looked different. Because today was the final day of waiting, of silence, of all of it. Ball nights in London began like this. Carriages, long, black, gleaming carriages, one after another, filling the street. People stepped out, gowns, jewels, perfume. As they entered, everyone walked a little differently, a little straighter, a little slower, because they were being watched. And to be watched was everything in that world. The Hartley Ball that year was larger than ever. The engagement of Viscount Hartley's daughter, that was the excuse. But the real reason was something else. It was the first great night of the season. Everyone would be there. Everyone would see each other. And everyone would talk. Clara stepped out of the carriage at exactly 8, a dark navy dress, her hair pinned up. The only piece of jewelry she owned from her mother, a thin silver chain at her neck. As she walked toward the entrance, there was a strange feeling inside her. She had attended many balls for years at Julian's side with the correct smile, the correct words. They had all been the same. They had all been exhausting. Tonight felt different. Because of those 2 letters, J.B. Julian was beside her. They had not spoken a single word in the carriage. His face had not changed since that morning. That strange, unfamiliar expression. Was it fear? Anger? Clara had not asked. As they entered, Julian's hand came to her back. That formal, habitual touch. Not guidance. Possession. Clara did not react. Inside was bright. Chandeliers, candles, crystal. The orchestra was preparing in the corner, not yet playing, the musicians adjusting their instruments. The hall was full. Faces, voices, perfume. Clara looked around, and somewhere, James would be. Julian stopped. A man approached, clearly one of Blackwood's men, quiet, well-dressed, expressionless. "Lord Ashby," he said, "your seat is prepared." Julian froze. Clara looked. His face had changed. That fear, now it was clear. "Which seat?" Clara asked. The man did not answer her. He simply gestured, front row, directly before the orchestra, at the very edge of the dance floor. Julian did not want to go. Clara could see it. In his steps, in his body. Everything in him said, stop. But he went, because he had no other choice. Clara still did not understand, not what had happened, not why Julian's face looked the way it did, not why that man had been waiting for them. But she followed him. They sat, and then the room changed. Sometimes, when a person entered, a room changed. It was rare, but it happened. You could feel the air shift. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. James Blackwood had entered. Clara saw him. And inside her, 10 years. Everything from those 10 years, the garden, those 2 years, that last night. The choice is yours. All of it came at once. It came, but Clara did not move. Her face showed nothing. She had learned that over years to show nothing. But her hands tightened in her lap. James entered the hall. He did not look around, or so it seemed. But Clara knew. Whenever James entered a room, he saw everything. He always had. His eyes flicked to Clara for a moment, 1 second, then moved on. Julian was beside her. And Julian's face, Clara glanced at him. He had seen James, and in that face there was understanding, late understanding, the source of the fear he had carried since morning. Blackwood was here. And Julian was seated in the front row. The orchestra was ready. Viscount Hartley stepped forward. A short speech. His daughter's engagement. Thanks. Welcome. The crowd applauded. Then the orchestra began to play. A waltz. The first couple onto the floor was Hartley's daughter and her fiancé. Then others followed. Couples formed, began to turn across the floor. Clara remained seated. Julian remained seated. And then a hand. It came from Clara's left, extended, palm upward. Silent. Waiting. Clara turned her head. James. standing beside her, looking at her. Those eyes, the same eyes from 10 years ago, but carrying the weight of 10 years. He said nothing. His hand was simply there. Clara froze. Inside her, there was too much all at once. 10 years that night in the garden, Julian, the debts, the false smiles, the exhaustion, and now this hand, this open, silent, waiting hand. She looked at Julian. He was pale. His eyes were on James. That look, the look of a man who understood, who had lost, who knew everything. Clara searched Julian's eyes for something. She found nothing. No stopping, no resistance, no, she is my wife. Only, he sat. Clara turned back and placed her hand in James's. They stood, walked to the floor, and in that walk, the room changed. Conversation stopped, heads turned, whispers spread, that familiar London whisper, spreading, judging, remembering. Blackwood, Lady Ashby, Julian is watching. They say he lost her at the gambling table, but Clara heard none of it because there was James's hand. And that hand, it was the same as 10 years ago, the hand from the garden, from the books, from the walks, from the real conversations. It had not changed. The dance began. James was a good dancer, Clara remembered. But this was not just a dance. He held her correctly, elegantly, but his eyes were on her. Those eyes, not looking anywhere else. The rest of the room did not exist. No Hartleys, no orchestra, no whispers. Only Clara. And Clara, for the first time in years, was seen. Truly seen. Julian had looked at her, but had never seen her. Never. There had been a wife there, properly placed. That was all. But James was looking, and in that look, everything was there. 10 years, regret, and beneath it, still there. Clara's eyes filled. She did not show it. She had learned not to, but James saw. And James said nothing, because there was nothing to say, or everything to say. But this was not the moment for words. They simply danced. Julian watched, front row, hands on his knees, pale. The room watched him, whispers, glances, smiles. Everyone knew. Everyone understood. The man had lost his wife at a gambling table, and now he was watching. What was inside Julian? Anger? Shame? Perhaps both. But more than anything, there was emptiness. Because as he watched that dance, he understood something. Clara had never danced with him like this. Not once. All those years, all those balls, all those careful performances, she had never looked at him that way. But she was looking at James with those eyes. The orchestra continued. The dance turned, and Julian sat, watched. A waltz lasts 3 minutes. 3 minutes? It seemed short. But on that floor, in that light, with those eyes, it was a lifetime. As the dance ended, Clara realized something. Slowly, piece by piece, it had come together during the dance. But now, in the final turn, James's hand at her waist, his eyes on hers, everything aligned. The invitation. Come, JB. Julian's face that morning. That fear. That broken, I'm fine. The front row, Blackwood's man. Your seat is prepared. in James, so calm, so ready, so planned. Clara's hand shifted. James felt it. She knew he did. His gaze did not break, but he was waiting. You, Clara said, her voice low, hidden beneath the music. You planned this. James did not answer. Julian, that table. Tonight. She paused. You. Something passed through James's eyes, not denial. The music slowed, final measures, the orchestra lowering the tempo. Why? Clara asked. And James, in that last turn, seconds before the music ended, spoke. One sentence, low, steady, carrying 10 years. Because I should have fought for you in that garden. The music stopped. The room applauded, that automatic polite applause. Clara and James stood at the center of the floor. Neither moved. Inside Clara, there was too much. Anger, a little, because she had not been asked, because once again, something had been done for her, in her name, without her being asked. But beneath it, there was something else, older, truer, that night in the garden. The choice is yours. She had felt abandoned, and now James was saying, I should have fought 10 years later. Was it too late? Perhaps. But he had said it. Clara turned. Toward Julian. He was still seated. Front row. Hands on his knees. The entire room watching him. His face had shifted from white to gray. His eyes were lowered. He could not look at her. Clara walked toward him. Straight. Calm. That practice walk she had learned over years. But this time, it was different. Not the walk of someone possessed. The walk of someone choosing. Julian lifted his head as she approached. And that look, it was the most naked look Clara had ever seen on his face. No arrogance, no control, only a defeated man. Clara reached into her pocket and took out the envelope. Now I need to explain something to you. That envelope, it was not an accident. It was 5 years of work. 5 years of quietly gathered documents, lawyer visits, debt records, witnesses, signatures, everything in place. Clara had not done this for Julian. She had done it for herself. Because Clara Ashby had known one thing for 10 years. This life was not hers. And one day, when the right moment came, she would leave it. That moment had come. She placed the envelope in Julian's lap. Divorce papers, she said. Her voice was even. The room could hear. Those beside her already had. Those farther away were turning. The whispers spreading. Julian froze. They're missing a signature, Clara said. Yours. Julian looked at the envelope. He did not open it. He did not need to. He knew what it was. Clara, he began. 5 years, Clara said. Her voice was still even, not low, not raised, simply clear. I have been preparing these documents for 5 years, waiting for the right moment. She paused. This is the moment. The room stilled. Not completely. London rooms never completely froze. But it slowed. Heads turned. The familiar whisper spread. Divorce papers. In public. Julian Ashby. He's finished. Julian tried to stand. He rose halfway, but his legs failed him. He sat back down. You'll ruin yourself, he said, his voice low. A divorced woman. Did I have a name to begin with? Clara said. Julian had no answer. The woman wagered at a gambling table. Clara continued. Half of London knows it tonight. Tomorrow, all of it will. She paused. You have a choice. You sign these papers, and this ends quietly. Or you refuse, and the lawyers begin. Your debts, your false partnerships, everything. Do you want it opened in court? Something moved across Julian's face. He was calculating. That final, desperate calculation of a defeated man, searching for an exit, as he always did. But this time, there was none. Clara did not wait for his answer. She turned, and in that turn, the room saw. Everyone saw. Clara Ashby had placed divorce papers in her husband's lap. In public. At the edge of the dance floor. Beside the Duke of Blackwood. And she walked. Not backward. Forward. James was waiting at the edge of the floor. He looked at her, that look, the one that did not ask, how are you, but did. Clara came to him, stopped. Neither of them spoke, because there was too much to say. And this moment, full, heavy, 10 years long, could not be contained in words. But Clara said this, low, only for James. I was waiting in that garden. James looked at her. I was waiting for you to fight, she said. I did not say it, but I was waiting. Something passed across James's face. That wait. That 10-year wait. I know, he said. Too late. Yes, Clara said, too late. Silence. But you are here, James said. Clara looked at him. You are here, he repeated, and I am here. A long silence. The room moved around them. Music had begun again, couples turning once more, life continuing. London always continued, but in that corner, between those two people, time moved differently. One more dance, James said. Clara looked at him. I should have asked 10 years ago, he said. I am asking now. He extended his hand, again. The same hand, palm upward, waiting. Clara looked at it, and inside her, that complicated, heavy, beautiful feeling settled, took its place, sank into her bones. 10 years had passed, yes, but some things, even when they arrive late, still arrive. Clara extended her hand, and Julian remained seated. The envelope in his hand, the dance floor before him, the room around him. No one was looking at him anymore, because there was nothing left to see. Julian returned home that night, alone. The carriage was silent. London outside, as always, loud, alive, indifferent. Cities are indifferent. When people fall, cities continue. Julian looked out the window. The envelope was still in his hand. Now I must tell you something. Julian Ashby's collapse did not happen in a single night. Some collapses are like that. Sudden, violent, visible. You fall like a stone, and everyone hears it. His was different. Slow, silent. Each day, something more disappeared, so gradually that it was hard to notice, but it accumulated. Until one morning, you looked in the mirror and saw what remained. Julian looked into that mirror that week, Monday. The envelope lay on the table, unopened, untouched. Julian made coffee, did not drink it. It went cold. In the afternoon, his lawyer came. He did not open the door. In the evening, he went to the club, Out of habit, stopped at the entrance, did not go in, turned back. Tuesday, a letter from Craven's Club. His membership suspended, temporarily, pending clarification of circumstances, polite wording, clear meaning. The door had closed. Julian placed the letter on the table, beside the envelope, side by side. Wednesday, a debt collector came. This time, Julian opened the door. There was no escape left. The number was spoken. He knew the number, but hearing it, it was different. There was reality in the voice, in the paper, in the man's expression, neither pity nor anger, only business. This week, the man said, payment or seizure. The door closed. Julian sat. For a long time, Thursday, an invitation arrived, Lord Pemberton's dinner. He attended every year, sat at that table, spoke to the right people. This year, it was not an invitation, a polite note, apologetic. The list is full this season, Julian understood. He had been removed from Pemberton's list, and a man removed from that list is removed from others. It was a chain. One falls, the rest follow. Friday, the landlord came. Rent is overdue, he said. 3 months, Julian knew. 1 week, he said. The man shook his head. 5 days. He left. Julian went to the window. The street below, people passing, carriages passing, life passing. And Julian stood there. What did he have left? That envelope, still in his hand. Saturday morning, Julian opened it. He looked at the documents for a long time. The lawyer's name, Clara's signature, grounds, irretrievable breakdown of the marriage, dates, clauses, terms. Clara had prepared this for 5 years. 5 years. As Julian read, something happened inside him. Was it anger? It did not come. Pain? Not exactly. It was more like understanding, late understanding. Clara had been there for years, and Julian had never seen her, not once. He took a pen, signed. The envelope went into the post that morning, and Julian sat at his table, alone, in an empty house, at an empty table, and looked at his life. What was there? Debts, closed doors, an empty invitation list, a signed divorce, and that table, that night, those cards, that voice. Lady Ashby, my wife. His own voice, from his own mouth. Was Julian remorseful? If asked in that moment, perhaps he would have said yes. But that remorse was not for Clara. It was for himself, for losing, for collapsing, for watching everything dissolve before him. And that was the truth. Weeks passed. The house was gone, as expected, quietly. Julian moved to something smaller, then smaller still. Each move a step downward, each step making him more invisible. Because London was like that. When you rise, everyone sees you. When you fall, no one looks. Shame is contagious. People step away. One evening, he encountered an old acquaintance, by chance, in the street. The man stopped, looked, recognized him, then looked away, walked on, as if Julian did not exist. That night, Julian sat in his small room, one candle, one chair, the sound of London outside, and inside him, that emptiness. Not the emptiness of the gambling table. That night had held excitement, desperation, madness, but now, there was only emptiness. He thought of Clara, that dance, that walk, that envelope, and earlier, Much earlier. That library. Clara reading. Lock. Why? He had asked. She had shown him. He had not understood. He had left. That moment, that small, meaningless moment he had not noticed then, now represented everything. He had not seen her, not once, and now it was too late to see. Julian extinguished the candle, sat in the dark. In London, continued outside, as always, indifferent, tireless. Julian remained inside it. No one pitied him. There was no need to. August. London summers were like this, warm, slow, the salons emptying as people retreated to the countryside. The city breathed, a little. At Blackwood Manor, morning. In Yorkshire, green, wide, birds in the garden, distant hooves, the scent of bread from the kitchen. Clara sat by the window. A letter in her hand. From her mother. Short, gentle, full of how are you. Clara read it, folded it, placed it on the table. Then she took a pen. She would reply. As she wrote the first word, she stopped. The signature. She had always written Clara Ashby. For years, automatically, without thought. But now, that name was gone. On the page, she wrote, Clara, then paused, then wrote, Clara Whitmore. Her own name, not her father's, her mother's family name, before Julian, before James, only hers. She set the pen down, looked at the signature, and inside her, something small, quiet, real, not triumph, not victory, something simpler. I existed. I was here. This was my name. The door opened softly. James. Breakfast is getting cold, he said, calm, as always. Clara turned. Coming. He did not leave. He stood in the doorway, looking, that look, always that look. What were you writing? To my mother. I saw the signature. Clara followed his gaze. Clara Whitmore. Whitmore, James said. My mother's name. He nodded. It suits you. Silence. That kind of silence. Full, easy, needing no words. Clara stood, took the letter. As she passed him, James took her hand, lightly. That familiar hand, the hand from the garden, from the ball, from 10 years of waiting. Clara stopped, looked at him, on his face, that expression, that almost invisible smile, still rare, but there. Breakfast is getting cold, Clara said. Yes, James said, but he did not move. Clara smiled, and they walked, together, into that morning light, down that corridor. Later, in the garden, Clara sat outside. The letter finished, sealed. On it she wrote, from Clara Whitmore, Blackwood Manor, Yorkshire. 2 names, old, new, both hers. James sat beside her. They looked at the garden, green, wide, quiet. I've been thinking, Clara said. About what? That night in the garden, she paused. You did not fight, James waited. But now, Clara said, I think if that night had been different, we might not be here. James looked at her. What do you mean? Clara thought for a moment. Those years, she said slowly, they were heavy, they were difficult, but I learned something about myself, what I want, what I do not. She paused. And now I am here, because I choose to be. James held her gaze for a long time. Do you regret it? he asked. What? Everything. Julian. Those years. Clara waited a second. Regret locks you to the past, she said. I would rather look at the present. She took his hand, that left hand, the one that once bore a ring mark, gone now, faded. In its place, a new mark, simple, silver, chosen. James, Clara said. Yes, that dance, she smiled. The second one was good, too. Something shifted on his face. That smile. This time, it remained. Morning continued in the garden. Birds, distant hooves, the lingering scent from the kitchen. And on that bench, 2 people sat. 10 years, 1 table, 1 dance, 1 envelope. And now, a morning, chosen, earned, real. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.